This essay was written on January 17th, 2017. It is number 18 in a series of 20 essays called Diagnosed Mortal. The robber don't hate you. The man was up on ladders with the window nailed in place. It was covered in black velvet, like a hood or like a veil. He pulled the sheet, and there it hung, apocryphal and frail. The seams had melted jagged. They were crooked like a spine. The glass was rough like hands of man against the hands of time. And there was blood stains in the red, and there were teardrops in the blue. He said, "It may not be the best, but it's the best that I can do." The chapel fell to silence. It was more than just surprise, as the monstrosity of color slid its tongue across their eyes. And they shivered from exposure like babies born again, 'cause in every pane of glass was all the joy and pain of man. This is a lyric from Stained Glass from the album Parables and Primes by Danny Schmidt. I've already written about music, and it was my intention to move on. But I'm not off the hook yet, it seems. I awoke this morning thinking of it, and it supplanted my prior plans. It seems the muse has other ideas, and I will acquiesce as I've learned to do so. So here goes, and here comes another overshare. Though I've told versions of this story before in my blog years ago, here it is again as part of my homage to my last bit of life. Perhaps someone will read it and find it helpful. It was an important time of my life and a story essentially of redemption and healing. It is essentially about how spirit works in the world of human nature. I moved here to wonder about it some more in light of my demise. I was born in the 50s to a predominantly female brood that was older than I by a decade. In our house, there was a radio that was always turned up and tuned in by my sibs to the then radically new rock and roll station that played what was excitedly referred to as songs from the hit parade. From birth, I was exposed to this music, and with this age of radio came the booming voice of the disc jockey who, in a serendipitous way, in my case, was called Big Boss Daddy. This seemingly innocent moniker played a huge part in my life, for I was a baby listening. I was fatherless and sought a male tone by nature. I found it in the voice in my radio, and quite unconsciously, father, music, and a godhead became merged like an accident waiting to happen to be planted in my tiny forming brain. It took a couple of decades, but the worm turned, and it exploded on the scene in my 20s to rake me good across coals and into adulthood. I already had 2 small children in tow as a single parent by this time, and it was not pretty for anyone involved. The fact that it was a spiritual awakening held little comfort at the time, and it did not work in my favor that I had the endangerment of a series of suppressed sexual assaults, untreated, already in my life experience. Without going into detail, I managed to dredge up a holy host of problems for myself in an attempt to survive my own enterprises. The words and the music in constant rotation in my head. I was pushed and pulled in 1,001 directions, forcing me into the vortex of the messages within popular culture, while desperately trying to figure out what was happening to me personally. This period of my life was a serious clusterfuck, and to this day I do not know exactly how I survived it. I do know that there was something at work for me that was stronger than my story as it was sanctioned for me from birth. When the hysteria rose and voices in my head suggested that I harm my children, I had sense enough to panic and made sure they were safely away from me with their father. I proceeded then, on my own, into deeper trouble. I don't think there was any avoiding things getting worse. There was little recognition of trauma postpartum or the acting out of emotional wounds, save putting the person away in an institution. Rape was fairly acceptable at the time. A woman had to be pretty straight and narrow to get anyone to even sympathize with an assault. It was a different world for women than the one we have come to enjoy today with our hard-fought-for rights and equalities. After a series of painful experiences, I was given a break and was able to figure out that I could help heal myself if I stopped listening to recorded music. I lost my ability to hear music. It broke my heart, because while the music brought me trouble, it also brought me solace. After I retrieved my children, no more music, no more father issues, no more seeking meaning. That was the treatment. With help, I developed new living skills and focused on trying to be a decent single parent to my sons. After a time, I realized that I could listen to live music without a problem. I was in pig heaven in the 90s. Women's voices were now in the music industry, and I was feeling stronger. Another decade moved me into the era of the personal computer and the rudimentary beginnings of social media. This is where the healing truly found purchase in me, and with the help of some very brave and trusting individuals, I was finally able to actually begin to build a life. I will write about that tomorrow, as this is already too long. Stephen Jenkinson talked this last summer about the necessity and nature of catastrophe and change. When thought about it and intellectually, it looked like a jigsaw puzzle or a game or some tidy mystery to solve. In real life, it is triage, body fluids, guts, pain, and unsavory torture, sometimes all happening at once with not enough on hand to deal effectively with any of it. One can pretend it was easier than it was. I have, and I see now there is a serious mistake in this. We all come by who we are, hard fought for, and I, personally, come into this day with a great deal of help. This is where the spirituality comes in, and it's not from an imaginary God in heaven that never shows up as beseeched, but from a crashing and a shattering event that allows access to a lineage of strength bequeathed by generations of ancestors who have come before. We are working out our own lives and healing theirs in the process. It is a lineage entrusted to us to maintain. I'm beginning to understand. What had appeared to me at first as an unfair disadvantage in my early life is, in fact, my cash. The onus of many generations given me. Over and through it all, the ones who showed up for the asking were the ancestors when I picked up the weight in the knowledge that I have lived a life of great privilege. Thank you for listening. This audio file corresponds to a blog post called The Robber Don't Hate You at allthedifferentways.com.